everyone, it's Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I have the pleasure of joining Sunny Studio Stamps for their very first birthday blog hop. This is a really fun time for Mendy, who is the owner of the Sunny Studio Stamps company. She's one of my friends and I am so happy for all of her accomplishments and how she's created such a fantastic company in such a short time. It's hard to believe it's her first birthday already. Now today I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of cards I made using one of her newest stamp sets, Autumn Splendor. I'm going to be showing you how I created two different style cards using the exact same set. You'll see the first card has a very artistic feel and the other one has a more traditional stamp layering feel. I'm going to show you how I did both of them. They're both very easy techniques and I think you're going to have a lot of fun getting some tips and tricks on how to create these really fantastic cards. Alright, so here's the stamp set I'm going to be using today. You can see all the different images that are included in this Autumn Splendor set. I love that there are so many different layering pieces and that the layering elements are really quite easy to use. They're not as complicated as some of the other layering stamp sets that are out on the market, so I think this is really great for someone who's learning how to use the layering stamp sets, doesn't have a lot of ink colors, or just wants something simple. Now I'm going to start by stamping with Distress Inks. I'm going to stamp an entire background here using my Distress Inks and the little stamps that are included in the Autumn Splendor set. Because I'm doing a background, I'm making sure I'm going to get all of the areas of this paper covered. And just making a very organic background. I love being able to piece images like this together to create my own custom designs. You'll also notice that the ink stamping is still a little bit splotchy. This is because we're using Distress Inks, and Distress Inks aren't going to stamp as crisp as a regular dye ink would. And I'm actually okay with that because I'm going to be creating an artistic feel to this card. And I'll show you how I do that in a second here, but first let's continue with the stamping. And again, I'm just taking the stamps and rotating them and creating a background. I'm using a variety of different colors. I'll have all the colors that I'm using listed on the side of the screen so that way you can kind of cross-reference, and I'll also have that linked over at my blog as well. And all of the products that I'm using today are listed in the video description and over at my blog as well, so be sure to head on over to check that out. Now this is where I go ahead and start creating my artistic style. You can see the stamping was splotchy. And because we're using Distress Inks, we're able to use the water to manipulate the ink and get it to react. I love Distress Inks because it's almost like stamping with watercolor, because once you put that water on there, it goes anywhere it wants to. If you want to do a little bit more controlled artistic feel, you could, instead of spraying with the water, you could go ahead and use a paintbrush with water on it and go ahead and blend things out to the desired look that you want. But I wanted something a little bit more free-flowing and less controlled. Now I'm taking those layering pieces and I'm going back over top of each image that I had stamped previously to go ahead and create the second layer and to give a little bit more depth. Now some of them it's a little hard to tell because you can see like that one leaf in the middle, that green one, that one got really blobby looking. So it's okay though, I really like how it adds that artistic feel to it and really makes this feel a little bit more like watercoloring. I'm going to go ahead and keep adding all those layering pieces on here until I have the images all completely stamped. And then I'm going to go ahead and take the stems of the leaves and go ahead and stamp those onto the leaves as well. I'm going to go ahead and take that Distress Sprayer once again and get all that ink moving. I wanted to make sure I did this in layers because I don't want to stamp everything all at once and then spray it because I'm not going to have as much definition. If I stamp it in layers and then spray in between each layer, that's going to give me a lot more dimension and making sure I maintain the shape of the leaf. Now here I'm going to go ahead and take my splatter brush. This is from Tim Holtz. I'm rubbing this into some ink here. This is some of the Gathered Twigs ink that we used. I think I also did put a little bit of brushed corduroy in here as well. But what I'm doing basically is I'm taking the splatter brush and I'm flicking the ink onto my paper to create splatters. And I really love doing this because it kind of gives you a nice easy way to go ahead and add those splatters down onto your paper rather than taking a paintbrush and kind of tapping it on your finger and trying to get the splatters to go everywhere. This is actually a lot of fun. I can really kind of control a little bit more where the splatter is going. So I'll go ahead and dry that, and now I'm taking it into my Big Shot, and I'm running it through my Big Shot machine with a hand-stitched rectangle die from Whimsy Stamps. Next I'm going to take the fishtail banner dies. These are from Sunny Studio, and they came out about a couple months ago, I think. And I'm going to be using them to create a chevron edge to my paper. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and put it on the one side of the paper, and I'm going to run this through my Big Shot machine completely. Now I'm going to take that die once again. I've cut down that extra edge there. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and put it back into my Big Shot, line it up with the area that I want to have the chevron to start up again, and I'll go ahead and run it through again. And this creates a really fun edge to the design. I love how this really creates such a fun look and something totally different that you don't always see on a card. Moving on to the next piece of this card, I'm taking another piece of watercolor paper, and by the way, I was doing all my stamping on watercolor paper as well. I don't remember if I mentioned that. But I'm going to take my distress inks now and create a background. And what I'm doing here is I'm basically creating my own pattern paper that's going to layer beneath my leaf layer. And I'm taking my distress inks and applying different layers, and this looks like a horrible mess. It looks like scribbles, like a 4-year-old did it. But this is intentional. I'm doing this because I want to create areas of color that kind of just blend into each other. I don't want any defined lines or anything like that. I want just areas of color that are very loose and free-formed. So I'm going to take more color after I've added some splatters and dried that first layer. I'm now taking fired brick, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to dab on color. And again, this looks really horrible, but in the end, it looks fantastic, and you'll see as we go along. I'm going to go ahead and do more of those splatters, more drying, and I do that between every single layer because I want the layers to have definition. I don't want them to blend all at once. They're going to blend as we add them, but I don't want them to blend completely, if that makes sense. So here I'm taking some seedless preserves. This is another color that I used in the stamping. And I'm using all the same colors that I used in the stamping for this background. And I'm going to move the colors a little bit when I need a little bit more water, so I'll just spray that on. And I'll keep working it. And until I have the desired look that I want, I'm going to go ahead and keep adding layers. And the other thing that this does is when you add layers upon layers, this creates more intense color. You'll see that the color here is much more intense and so much more vibrant than it was in the beginning. And that's because we're adding more layers on top of each other, and the layers that are underneath are the ones that stain the paper, and the ones that we apply later are just sitting on top of those layers that we already applied down. So it's not soaking into the paper quite as much and dulling back. So once I finished working that and getting all my layers and splatters down, I'm going to take my top layer, this is the layer that we did all of our stamping, and I'm going to apply a piece of fun foam to the back of it. And that's just going to help me pop it up off the card. I applied that little pattern paper strip that we had created using just some regular adhesive. I applied that right down onto my wood grain card base. The wood grain card base is from Simon Says Stamp. And here you can see I'm going to finish up by just showing you how I finished up the card because I do want to show you another technique. And this video would get kind of long if I showed everything from start to finish. So what I did was I took a sentiment from the same stamp set, the Autumn Splendor set, and I stamped it with 2 different colors of dye ink that matched the stamping that I did for the leaves. And then I also added some embellishments from 28 Lilac Lane embellishment kits, and I'll have those linked down in the video description and also on my blog so you can find out which exact embellishments kits that I used. And then for final finishing touch, I tied a bit of twine across the top of the card. And I really love how it adds that nice earthy feel to this card. Really, really beautiful. Okay, so now moving on to my second technique, I'm taking a bunch of different dye inks here. These are both from Simon Says Stamp and Hero Arts. And I'm going to be using pretty much the same type of colors that I used in the previous card. However, this one's going to look a little bit more graphic and a little bit more cleaner than the first card. The first card was a bit more artistic. This one's more traditional stamp layering. So I'm going to take some of my ink colors and I'm stamping the leaves and the branches and everything all in a random fashion in different colors. I really love how these colors all match together really well. And I'm going to go ahead and link all of the ink colors that I used for this card also down at the video description and on my blog. So if you're interested in any of that, those colors are listed there. And I also have the color combinations listed on the side of the screen here. So I'll go ahead and keep working this until I have the background completely covered. And you can see I got some areas where some images are closer than others. And that's okay. I'm totally fine with that. If you want it to be a little bit more perfect, you might want to be a little bit more careful than I was. But I really think that the areas where some are closer than others really helps this have a bit more of a handmade feel and also gives it a little bit more of a realistic feel, I think. Because, of course, when leaves are falling from the trees, they're not going to be falling in even fashion. There's going to be some that are falling really close together and others that are falling farther apart. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and work on the second layer. You can see here a lot easier, rather than in the artistic version, how those layers really work well together. You can see how it adds that really cool graphic style look to these leaves. I really love that look. It's something very modernistic and clean and simple. And I think, again, this is a really great stamp set for beginners to use because their images are so easy to line up because they're such simple shapes. So once I've added all the second layers, I'm now going to go ahead and take the stems and I'll go ahead and ink those up and stamp them down on top of my leaves just to get everything finished up. And then for our final bit of stamping, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of stamps from the Sweet Shop stamp set. This is a stamp set that's fairly new to Sunny Studio. And I'm taking a gray ink from Altenew and stamping these in the background just to help finish it off and fill in those empty spaces. And then I did color them in with a brown Copic marker. And then to finish this card up, all I did was added some yellow cardstock underneath that matched the stamping, and then added that onto a Desert Storm card base that I applied a little bit of ink blending to create some texture. And then I tied a bit of hemp cord like I did for the first card, and I also put my sentiment there as well, stamped in the same ink colors that I used on the first card. So I hope this has helped you get an idea of what you can do with the Autumn Splendor stamp set from Sunny Studio Stamps, and give you a couple of ideas on how to create two totally different cards using the same exact stamp set. Stamp sets are so versatile that you can create almost any type of style using any type of stamp. It's really fun how you can put your spin on things to go ahead and create something totally different that somebody else would make, and also create totally different feels. If you're into different types of styles of cards, this is a really fun way to go ahead and create those different styles really quickly and easily. So I hope you've enjoyed and got some inspiration. Here's another video you might like featuring Sunny Studio Stamp products. Please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and be sure to head on over to my blog to get more information on the fun blog hop that's happening in celebration of Sunny Studio Stamp's first birthday. Be sure to connect with me on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, as well as my blog, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching!